love that saying. That's terrific. A suitcase without a handle. I'm going to steal that. None of you ever heard me say that. No, I would absolutely credit you. We don't know, do we? We don't know what would have happened if Kennedy had lived. Obviously, in the course of 11/22/63, I wanted him to live long enough so that I could peek into the future and see what would have happened if he hadn't lived. And it seemed to me that the happy ending was to say that if he had lived, things would have ultimately gotten worse. And by writing that kind of story, you're saying something thematically. And the thematic thing, which always sounds worse when it's stated baldly, is that things happen for a reason. And we don't necessarily believe that, but it's certainly more comforting to believe that things happen for a reason, like the assassination of Kennedy. I keep coming back to what an amazing sequence of events led up to that shooting. And there's no wonder that there's conspiracy theories about it, but we'll never know. So it's always going to be a suitcase without a handle. I gave you a handle in 11/22/63. You can carry the suitcase a little ways and maybe open it up and see what's inside. But of course, when you close the book, the suitcase loses its handle again. God, I love that metaphor.
Next. Yeah, move it.
I'm from the French magazine 30 ans et demi, 30 years and a half. In 22/11/63, the main character...
That was a great piece, by the way. He's that magazine, boy, I just love that. I couldn't believe it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to basically cool him a little bit.
Your main character goes back to the past. If you could do the same, but you could only change something in your work, what would you change and why?
If I could change something in my work, you say?
Yes.
Well, definitely I would try harder to make Maximum Overdrive a better movie. And I'm tempted to say that I would not have worked with Dino De Laurentiis at all, but I don't think that that would have been the case because he was sort of a fabulous individual in his way. I can remember going over to his house. I mean, he was just a great guy. And we were, at that time, this miniseries called The Thornbirds was on TV. And his daughter, Raffaella, would come in, and she was tall and gorgeous, and she was always, seemed like she was back from riding horses, and she had on jeans and these tall boots and everything, and she crashed down on the sofa next to her father and put her boots up on the coffee table and look at the TV and say, "When do they get to the fucking?" And Dino would kind of give her the elbow. And he had a studio in North Carolina, which coincidentally is now where Under the Dome is filmed. And he would not, his first feature was Cat's Eye with Drew Barrymore, who was then a little tiny slip of a girl. And he would not start filming until he got a priest in and blessed the studio. Much good that it did. But if I could go back and change one book or movie, geez. You know, when you look back at the books that you've written, there is an element of embarrassment where you say, I can't really believe that I wrote that. So, in some ways, it's better not to go back at all, rather than, because you take a crack at everything. Do you know what I'm saying there?
I was thinking of something else. I will ask you a question.
I figured you were thinking of something else. I kind of traveled away. All right, I didn't answer that, and now let's have another one that I won't answer.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Would you be inspired by the shutdown period in the United States? Remaking the story, it happened, it's confirmed that during the 27-day shutdown period in 1997, it is the period during which Bill Clinton met Monica Lewinsky. How did the shutdown happen? What would you write down about it?
The current shutdown?
No, the one in 1997. He met Monica Lewinsky during the shutdown. But wouldn't the shutdown have happened? Do you think it would be another story?
Of course.
Would we have the
There's
Lewinsky
always
affair?
another story, but, you know, I don't see the Monica Lewinsky affair as one of those watershed moments, because he basically survived it.
Survived.
I'm not
Yeah, he
sure
survived. He survived.
how he did. But, yeah, you know, the whole American politics at this point is like one of my stories almost. It's a very surreal place to live in America right now, politically speaking, because the two sides don't talk. It's almost as though a third of the country, the so-called red states, is seceded from the rest. And they've done sort of an extended tantrum over Obama's re-election, a slow motion tantrum. And so it's a very strange thing. But my political novel was The Dead Zone, which was about, again, the whole subject of assassination, which is an American specialty.
Next. Yes, yourself here, and then Adam over there. Okay, you have the microphone. Go ahead first, and then you come to me.
Okay. Helen Rowe, Agence France Presse. Was there a certain nervousness on your part to writing a sequel, and what are the pitfalls?
Yeah, I was nervous. I won't say that I was, I mean, I use that, the whole idea of the challenge. But a lot of people think of The Shining as one of the scary books that they've read in their lives. And the thing is, most of them who come up to me and say, you know, that Shining, that book really scared me. And I'll say, well, yes. You were 14 years old, you were away at summer camp, and you were reading with a flashlight under your covers. Of course I scared you. You were easy. You were a virgin. You hadn't seen Friday the 13th, Last House on the Left, or any of those things. You were easy to scare. Now they're all grown up, and you know, no matter what you write, there'll be a contingent who'll say, well, that wasn't very scary. So there was that, I wouldn't say nervousness, but there was that challenge. You convert the nerves into a challenge. The other thing that I saw as a problem in terms of writing the book was, in my novel, the Overlook was gone, the Overlook burned down. Of course, you will have seen the Stanley Kubrick movie, and in the movie, the hotel sort of freezes in a big snowstorm. But that's the difference between Mr. Kubrick's vision and mine. His is cold and mine is hot. So the hotel in what I think of as the true history of the Torrance family, which is The Shining, the hotel was gone, but I still wanted to bring Danny back to Colorado, to that place, because in terms of creating a novel that has a feeling of balance, you want to create a circle, you want to create something that has roundness and fullness. There's a sort of satisfaction to that. Can't explain it, it's just there. It's like a song where the chorus comes back around. So I wanted to bring him back there, and at the same time, I didn't want to force him. You don't want to force your characters to do anything if you can help it. See what I'm saying? So, yeah, it was, but to me that's interesting. To try and do that is part of the challenge and part of the fun. I like what I do, so.
I want to put to you a question that Marilina Astrampelou, a Greek journalist who's probably here somewhere, said, but I'm going to try to paraphrase this slightly because I think it could be broadened down a little bit. Do you think younger audiences who these days have access to all sorts of horrifying video games and movies and all that, are those things cutting into your audience? Are young people paying attention to science fiction, horror movies like horror books like they used to, or is that audience gradually dying at the sword of the video games and others?
No, I think that there's still an appetite for that kind of, let's say, safe scare. You know, like an e-ticket ride at Disney World, where everything seems very, very scary, but it's really not. It's kept at some distance. And I think that there is the biggest market for fantasy and horror is probably in the age range of maybe 15 to 30, 32, something like that. Because when you're that age, you feel bulletproof. And so it's kind of fun to watch somebody terrorized by a demon in the house, if it's well done. It doesn't matter whether you're 15 or you're 50. If it's crap, if it doesn't work, you know it, that's all, and the thing doesn't really succeed. But I think that you have less of a tendency, let's say, to go to a movie and see something that's really scary if you're 50 or 60, because you're facing real life horrors by then. You know, cancer, loss of loved ones. But I do want to say this, that the real key to scaring people, nobody really gets case hardened to fright. And the key to it is to create characters that people care about. If you care about them, and they're put in jeopardy, you're going to be afraid for them, because that's one of the great things about human nature. We have that empathy, we have that ability to put ourselves in somebody else's place, and to feel for them. I'm watching a series, and my French publisher, Albin Michel, is here, and they had just better get me that DVD set. There's a French series called Les Revenants. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. It's been a long time since high school French for me. But it's called The Return in English. And it's a terrific series. Have any of you seen it? Raise your hand if you've seen the series. Yeah. Not enough of you. Damn it, you gotta get with it, guys. But it's great. A school bus goes off a cliff, and all the children who are on a field trip are killed. And it's not done with splatter or gore. You see the bus, you see it go over the side, you hear some sound effects, and that's it. And then 4 years later, they start to come back. And it's terrific, because you see the people who've been left behind, and you see the grieving process, and it's very human. And if we relate as human beings, then it works. Yeah.
If we stick to the schedule, we have still time for 4 or 5 questions. Who's next? Oh my God.
Ana Nuña from the Spanish.
I'll be quick.
Spanish television, Telecinco. Back.
Hold up.
Here, back. No. I'm here. The other side. In the other side. Yeah, maybe the right side. Don't let you see me. Okay, I'm here. From the Spanish television, Telecinco. With his power of almost control, I would like to know what is afraid now than Torrance, and what about you as a scary books writer? What are you afraid of? And second question, how autobiographical is this Dan Torrance character? Thank you.
I'm sorry, no, I'm not.
¿Usted puede poner su pregunta en español? No.
I can repeat if you want.
Yeah, go, speak a bit more slowly.
Okay. With his power, almost control, what is now Dan Torrance afraid of? And what about you, as a writer, what are you afraid of, if I may ask the question? And how autobiographical is this character? Thanks.
Oh, yeah. How autobiographical is David's character? Not very. Jack Torrance was a little bit more autobiographical, but I think that to some degree, all characters that a writer writes about are himself. You just you disguise them in different ways. As to what I'm afraid of now, I would say at my age, I'm afraid of Alzheimer's, dementia, declining intellectual ability. That scares the heck out of me. Somebody else?
Next.
Short question.
A short question.
Sorry,
Go ahead. The lady here.
Magnus Falker.
Where are you?
Sorry?
Okay, go ahead.
Magnus Falker, Swedish daily newspaper, Dagens Nyheter. Talking about the 22nd of November 1963, Can you tell us what you did that day, if you remember, and how you reacted when you heard about the JFK murder?
Well,
Being murdered?
we all remember where we were, and I'm sure the people at this table would say the same thing. I was on my way home from school, and I lived in a little tiny town, and there was no bus service, so a bunch of the parents had clubbed together to rent a taxi that took us back and forth. It was actually a renovated hearse. And there were 6 or 8 of us in the car, and the driver was a bad-tempered old grouch named Mike Yanko, who never said anything, and he never played the radio. And what we wanted when we got out of school was to listen to rock and roll. And we had to wait till we got home because he wouldn't play the radio. And that day, he had the radio on. And we heard the news that the president had been shot, and that he'd been shot in the head. And Mr. Yanko, the cab driver, said, if he's shot in the head, he's gone. And sure enough, a few minutes later, we got that report that he was gone. And when I got home, my mother was in tears. She was a lifelong Republican, but she kept saying, oh, his poor wife and his poor orphan children. So, yeah, I remember very clearly. Where were you, Jim?
I was in a high school class. I remember it very graphically. They typed the news into the loudspeaker system. Yeah, absolutely. I think every American knows exactly what it is.
I was rocking asleep. My sister was 14 years old and was watching TV, black and white TV at the time, and it came on the television. And really struck me. Last 2 questions. I don't know how
Erwin from
you
BFM
decide who will answer. 2 questions.
Erwin from BFM TV.
Yeah, go ahead.
At the beginning, the staff of the press conference said the last time we organized a big conference like that, it was when Colin Powell came in France during the Iraqi war. It's not scary for you?
She knows about Colin Powell's record. You broke the record today, as I told you. Record 40.
I don't understand the interest. I mean, I'm just an old washed up writer. But it's great that everybody came. It makes me feel like Justin Bieber. It's not scary, it's wonderful, and I'm really glad that you all came. Maybe we ought to close on this.
Last one. Maybe a lady. Yes, go ahead. All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Just basic question. You're in Paris.
Why Paris?
Okay, you are in Paris. What are you going to do the tourists?
What am I going to do to
Yeah, what are you
tourist
going
around?
to do to enjoy yourself on your leisure time?
Well, I have some things planned, but if I told you, I'd have to kill you. No, I mean, it's, I'm going to do, well, for one thing, I think that I have to go to the Louvre, and I think that I have to go and put on some lipstick and kiss Oscar Wilde's tombstone. And I have to make a pilgrimage to see Jim Morrison's grave. I mean, I am what I am. Of course, I'm going to go to the graveyard, okay? The catacombs. Thank you all very much.